I welcome you all on the panel discussion at the third annual Global IT Security Summit, where I invite my two esteemed panelists, who is Peter Splank, who is working as a cybersecurity director at PwC, and
Hello.
yeah, and with him I invite Matthew Marilado, who is working as manager security research from RIA Group of Industries. Okay,
Hello, thanks.
so the topic of our panel discussion is the impact of COVID-19 on cybersecurity, and how has the threat landscape changed since the crisis started, and what type of threats are on the increase. So first of all, I would like to start with Peter Splink. Kindly.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So basically, what we see as like direct result of the COVID pandemic is net increase in the cyber attacks. Mostly, to be honest, on the very basic, directly for-profit motivated ones. So phishing emails, 400 to 600% on the increase. Ransomware attacks, big thing, both on the commercial side as well as of the critical infrastructure and healthcare specifically. This has all been like the, I would say, leitmotif of the COVID pandemic. And one of the important enablers and a threat on its own, I would say, is the actual move of everyone to working from home, because suddenly people are not in the protection of the corporate environment. And basically, we are now seeing the illustration of the perimeter is dead claim, that right now it's finally without any doubt like visible. Perimeter is dead. The user is the perimeter. And if the user is working from his home network or even from his home computer, just because it's the only way how the company enables that, the users are vulnerable. And we see this pretty often.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think? What do you think, Matthew? Uh, how cybersecurity will introduce the new technologies to cope up with this heavy demand within a small span of time? Because as you know, COVID has realized us. COVID has forced us to bring everything online. The businesses are vastly coming online. The culture is
Hmm.
getting different. On the physical presence is getting very um, disappearing with the passage of time. How do you think
Hmm.
the technology is contributing in the cybersecurity vision? And what do you think cybersecurity in the coming days?
So basically, uh, we observed a set of changes, as was correctly introduced before, in the way in which we relation with the with work. And one of the major changes was to move a lot of business, a lot of activities online. I think cybersecurity is becoming a much more important. It was already very important, and cybersecurity importance as a domain of knowledge, of human domain of knowledge, was already increasing in the past 10, 15 years. Now it's even more important. It's even more important because, of course, all the business is done online, but also because there is still, despite that, despite the fact that we are a very high technologized society, there are still a lot of weaknesses at the stage at the human level. So there is not too much awareness in the general public, and I'm talking about all the type of activities except maybe some specific technological one. But if you take an hospital, for example, where a lot of personnel is now working on remote, except the people staying directly on site, hospitals, if you take in Europe, for example, but not only, are one of the usually weakest critical infrastructure from a cybersecurity perspective. So definitely, it is important for cybersecurity experts, for academy, for organizations and companies to work on awareness from the IT professional to the general public, to understand how bad our life can change if a cyber attack is pursued with success. Another important mitigation for the issues that we are facing now with the COVID is definitely the governance aspect. So since all the business is moving online, is extremely important, and so there are a lot of new threats, a lot of old threats which are becoming much more frequent. Give me a second. Sorry. Okay, so there are a set of old threats becoming much more frequent related to cyber attacks on for example, the VPN, the fact that you are using your device, your own device for working reasons and so forth. So at the level of governance, the organization needs to understand that it's important to work on a more secure way. It's important to consider security, cybersecurity, in much more relevance than they were considering before. And we saw a lot of problems related to that. I have quite an experience in relationship to hospitals. During the first wave of pandemic in March and April, there were a lot of cyber attacks which are being pursued because the hospitals simply didn't have a governance structure in relationship to cybersecurity that was strong enough. So they had no policy for bringing your device home, for working with your device. They had no policy for physical security, access control, and so forth. And there has been a lot of issues. So definitely, it's the moment in which all the knowledge that we developed in the past year, we need to fastly spread throughout the society at different levels,
Exactly.
my opinion.
Exactly. So, Peter, what do you think the role of AI in the cybersecurity future? What do you think? What is the role of artificial intelligence?
That's a tricky question because I know that AI is the future and everyone speaks about AI and so on. But to be honest, I think that before we go to AI-driven security, like for real and not on PowerPoint, we need to address some fundamentals before. Like, what use has artificial intelligence in organization that does not have the visibility into the environment? If you don't know what your assets are, what your internet breakouts are, if you don't even control your users, your identities, what do you want to do with AI? That's not an AI problem, that's technological debt problem, and we need to solve that first. So in the future, yes, there will be AI threats, and we see like starts of that when it comes to like to machine attacks and automated attack campaigns and so on. And this basically forces the defenders on either being harder on defense or faster. So like the need for automation, machine learning, and yes, maybe in the future AI is visible. But right now, I would say nine times out of 10, when I see a company and they want to improve their security, it's not an AI that's going to help them. It's just, I would say, basic but consistent and robust security program on all levels, people, process, but technology as well. Like when you have a company that says, for me, coverage of my antivirus, my patch management, whatever, 80% is huge success. To me, that says like you are aiming for failure. Because if you aim to have 20% not covered, not managed, shadow IT, whatever, you will fail in these 20% for sure. And that's like strategic to implementation level type of problem that's not going to be solved by AI.
So, Peter and Matthew, I want to take your point of views on this. That what are the challenges? What do you see the future challenges that cybersecurity and AI and the cybersecurity technology will face in the coming future during the COVID era? Matthew?
So, okay. So I think we are going to face we're going to face a set of challenges at first, and I'm coming back a little bit to the comment from Peter, is the fact that despite the technology, of course, is improving quite fast, there are still too many organizations and too many even individuals that really have no knowledge and no background, no culture in cybersecurity. So I think there will be a lot of division, of cultural division between organizations that still are the very beginning of a cultural change where cybersecurity is considered at the proper level, and the capabilities of the attackers, because the capability of the attackers are really increasing quite a lot. So our baseline shouldn't be like a big organization with strong cybersecurity culture, but should be the thousands and hundreds of thousands of SMEs which have almost no cultural knowledge in cybersecurity. And so one of the challenges is to try to increase this base level of the society with what regards to cybersecurity and privacy issues. And for example, the European Union tried to do some steps in order to increase the baseline, but of course there is quite a lot of work to be done. And if you consider the fact that we are working a lot on the digital market, the digital European market and so forth, but still we are inherently cyber insecure, that's quite of a challenge for the future. Then, of course, there are a set of technological challenges related, for example, the usage of AI for attacks, which can, the usage of quantum computing for attacks. So all of these are technological challenges, but I can still see quite a big cultural challenge, because even after the first wave of pandemic, where a lot of cybersecurity issues were rising, at the end, some budgets changed in the organization. More organizations are starting considering spending more on cybersecurity, but in my opinion, that's not sufficient. So the cultural change I can see really as a challenge for the very next year, not 10 years in the future, but 2-3 years in the future.
Okay. So, what do you think? How do you see, Peter? How do you see the challenges of the cybersecurity in the coming COVID-19 era? How do you see that?
So I see some positive things, and specifically, as Mantel mentioned, the change of budget and change of culture. I see an improvement here since the last 2008 financial crisis, which I already lived through in cybersecurity. And at that time, the financial crisis and the impact of the businesses resulted in companies actually cutting down the budgets for cybersecurity, removing redundant servers, removing people, basically decreasing the spend whenever it was possible. And they created big issues for them, which they now realize. So when we actually ran as PwC our global survey on digital trust, the findings were that, and let me have a look at this. 55% of the companies on a quite representative sample actually plan to increase their cybersecurity budget, and only 25% plan to decrease it. The rest is pretty much staying the same. So, and this is from like the C-level, CEOs, board of directors, and so on, the executive suite. So this is, I think, one important distinction from past, that the security as a enabler and must have for business is recognized.
Okay.
What are the threats still is, I think the big threat is the technological debt, because honestly, building a secure organization nowadays, if I were to go there and build it on a green field, is much more simple and actually cheaper than to take the organization of similar size that has 40 years of legacy technology everywhere and trying to transform it to the next level. That's much more difficult challenge.
Okay.
And from the attacker's perspective, I see really the challenge of speed, because we have seen that in WannaCry and NotPetya attacks, where suddenly you have from the initial compromise to spread to achieving the objectives minutes or low hours. And a lot of organizations are just not equipped in responding to incidents in such a time frame.
Okay. What I need to ask, what I think the people want to listen, and what I need to listen. What do you think? How do you compare the current cybersecurity and the vision of cybersecurity in the future? How do you compare these both the aspects? What we are going through in the field of cybersecurity, and how we are going in the future of this domain. What do you think? The difference, Matthew?
So I think one of the interesting difference, I'm talking a lot about EU because I'm quite involved on the EU policies, EU programs and so forth. I think there, I mean, not I think, that there is for sure a strong increase of the governmental interest. And when I say governmental, I mean at the EU level, in with regards to cybersecurity, to the cybersecurity domain, to cybersecurity issues. And that's what is giving me hope for the fact that probably the general situation, the general awareness of the individuals and the companies is going to improve in time. Because at the end of the day, I believe that only a general governmental push can provide, can really improve the general cybersecurity release resilience with respect to the new technological challenges. So a difference that I can see, but in reality could have been already seen in the recent programs from Horizon 2020 and so forth, is that now there is quite a lot of interest from the macro organization, macro governmental organization with respect to cybersecurity. So definitely with respect to the past, that's quite an important item.
Okay.
And cybersecurity in the actual programs is seen as important as AI, for example. And I think that's quite an interesting change that has been propagated throughout the past years.
Okay. Okay. So, Peter, what do you think? How do you compare these two, current era of cybersecurity and the future of cybersecurity? How?
So definitely much bigger play in the future will be in cloud. Like I think that's something that the COVID basically taught everyone, that in past there was a lot of hesitation on adopting the cloud from the commercial sector. Specifically, the financial sector was very reluctant to go to cloud in certain countries. But also the governmental institutions were basically not believing in the public cloud as like not good enough, not secure enough, and basically they were trying to reinvent the wheel, in my opinion, quite often. And now the need dictated the adoption, because basically what's visible to pretty much everyone is if an organization was fully in cloud prior to COVID, the switch to remote work, scaling out or scaling down was pretty simple, and they are enjoying the benefits. The organizations that were part in the transition are now accelerating the transition because they really see that what was in cloud is like giving them benefits, and what's on premise or tied to physical location of people, computing resources, or data centers is just an issue for real. And organizations that were completely out of cloud are now panically, I would say, trying to catch up, because they realize that no longer we are in an era where the option to fall back to pen and paper is viable. It was viable in 2008 when I was working in cybersecurity. There were budget cuts, and it was literally quite often the alternative. If we don't do it online, can the people on the ground in different countries do it with phone, pen, and pencil? And sometimes the answer was yes. It's not the case anymore. You cannot just switch most of the businesses today to paper-based organization anymore.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. You know, the time is a little short. I need to take point of view on one thing on both of you, from both of you. What are the major threats do you think will get increased? What are the major threats which will prevail during this? And what are the disadvantages through this cybersecurity era or this COVID and cybersecurity collaboration? What are the major threats? Matthew, first.
So what I can refer is we recently did an analysis in reference to several projects where we are involved. So we analyzed during the first wave of the pandemic how the threats were changing in terms of intensity, in terms of type, and so forth, directly connected to the COVID-19 crisis. So it's going to be a short horizon, but I think it's going to be interesting. So the first thing, which is quite important, is that from a technical perspective, in this COVID-19 situation, we didn't at least registered a new type of a specific type of technological threats. However, the existing types, starting from phishing to malware to quite a lot of phishing, to be honest, but also issues related to the remote access and so attacks on the personal computers driven by malware and viruses. All of that increased quite a lot. And took stayed quite close to the concept of the pandemic. So, for example, there were a set of phishing campaigns related to things like, do you want to know the truth around the COVID? Do you want to have more protection? Download this application. Or, for example, spoofing email from fake wealth organization, hospitalization, and so forth. So all of that had quite a strong increase, but I think really quite a strong increase in the first wave, but also now we are observing again in this second wave. And so basically the attackers adapted all the ways to perform attacks, trying to concentrate them and to focus them to this specific problem. Then we had a major increase, since there is a decrease in the trust of the people with respect to the governments. Of course, there is a lot of increase in conspiracy theories and so forth. And many cyber attacks now are related to that. So again, phishing campaigns related to fake news or related to, for example, trying to negate the importance of the COVID-19 situation. So, and I think that in the future that is going to be quite common. So every time that we are going to face a crisis, cyber attackers are going to use the crisis in order to bring their attacks using the methods that we know.
Perfect. Okay, so quite short. Peter, so what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think that definitely, as Matteo mentioned, the fact that attackers are using the crisis as a lure, that's nothing new, and that's going to stay with us. What's going to stay with us and grow in prominence is ransomware in all sorts of flavors. You will have ransomware that actually steals the data first, asks for money not just to return you the data, but not to publish them or not to sell them. You will see a lot of destructive ransomware that will be attacking especially the critical infrastructure and basically just trying to wreak havoc. So ransomware in all sorts is going to stay and is going to be more and more important. What is also going to rise, I believe, is the attack on the physical world. So the operational technology, IoT, smart devices, smart homes, because their development is being accelerated. It's not directly related to the COVID-19, it's just a time correlation, but they represent a significantly interesting attack surface. And finally, what I think is going to be a big topic is, as I mentioned before, companies moving to cloud, that also creates single point of failure in the cloud, especially when we are speaking about public cloud. And yes, I do have high trust in Microsoft, Google, or Amazon to build resilient data centers and so on. But with more and more proportion of the world being reliant on these three, really, the more important if they stay on. We all know in past 6 months, when there was like few-hour outage on one of these major providers, the whole world literally knew about it, and it was impacting real life. So I would expect some threats coming back the DDoS. Like DDoS is no more a thing basically these days, but I think it might get attractive again.
Thank you so much, Peter Splink and Matthew, for your great point of view and the insights that you have shared with us in the field of cybersecurity. It's an honor for us to have you both on our panel discussion, and we wish to work with you in the future as well. And I hope that this panel discussion will add value to all the people attendees who are watching this. and they will come out. They will find some new insights about the cybersecurity in the future. Thank you so much for participating. And still, if anybody wants to have any question regarding this panel discussion, they can ask this question on the main chat, and Peter and Matthew will be going to answer those questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Thanks.
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 Bye.
Bye. So now we will be heading to our next presentation, which will be given by Damon Remers, who is a marketing manager for BitClass. Within few minutes, we will be starting his presentation. Thank you so much.